Welcome to the Heidi Thorne Show. I'm your host, Heidi Thorne, and in this podcast, I share my real-world self-publishing and small business experience with you. So let's get started with today's show. Now, on the blog, I got a great question from a self-published author who had published a book a few years ago and had been contacted by some publishers who told her that her book qualified for traditional publishing. Now, what was setting off alarms in this author's head was that the book hadn't received a lot of sales and she doesn't have a lot of following on social media. So why was this happening? And she wanted to know, is this something that typically happens? Okay, let's break this down. First of all books are eligible for traditional publishing, by the way. Eligible is the phrase, the key phrase there. Most of them will not make it to traditional publishing. So there's that. It's just that traditional publishers aren't scouring the internet or Amazon for self-published books that they can just transform into a traditionally published book. It doesn't work like that. Traditional publishers are, first of all, most of them, the big ones, especially the big trade publishers, they work with authors that are agented, meaning that the author is represented by an agent. So those big publishers, chances are you are just not going to be contacted by a publisher at random. And they'll say, wow, your book is just fantastic. We want to traditionally publish it. Not going to happen. Traditional publishers are also looking for authors that have not only a lot of sales, if they are looking at self-published books, they want to see that you've made a ton of sales. And I'm not just talking about 100 or two, I mean thousands and thousands and thousands of sales. That's going to be of interest to them. They're also going to be looking for authors who have a massive following. And that would be on like YouTube, or maybe they have a big blog. Maybe they have some massive groups of followers on Instagram or Facebook or Twitter or something like that. They're going to be looking for people that have a following. And why? Because that means there's a lot of potential sales. Now, the author was questioning whether these companies that were contacting her were just companies who wanted to sell her something like book promotion services. And I think she was spot on with that. And I want to give her kudos for being aware enough that, these things just don't happen naturally in the wild. So you definitely want to be a little skeptical when people reach out to you and say, your book is the best, and we think it has potential for traditional publishing. It might have potential for publishing with them, but again, a lot of those these days are either like vanity presses, or they might be hybrid publishing. That's another thing that's coming in. And like I'm saying, not all of these are, bad companies or bad actors or anything like that. Some of them are just trying to do sales outreach. But generally, it's not going to be the big traditional book deal as you would expect. And what I had seen a few years ago was an author friend of mine who was contacted by one of these groups, and they told her that they would introduce her to a traditional publisher, or they would send her book over, her book idea or her book manuscript over to a traditional publisher. Now that generally means nothing unless they're going to represent you and help you get that deal. You know, it doesn't mean anything because, I mean, you can send your manuscript to a traditional publisher if you want. Chances are it won't be accepted right out of the gate. That's pretty rare. But I don't know. I think when you get these inquiries like this from somebody that's contacting you as a self-published author, you want to be very skeptical and you want to know all the details. You want to know what they're selling you. And you basically, I mean, if I got one of these, I would run away immediately or ignore it. I mean, I just can't see this as a viable situation for self-published authors. I mean, it's just so rare that a traditional publisher is going to randomly pick up a self-published book and publish it, that, you know, I think it's just like somebody who said, oh, you know, you could be a star in Hollywood. Oh, please give me a break. Yeah. So just a word to the wise: if you get these kind of inquiries, scrutinize the inquiry and be very skeptical. So I hope you have found that helpful, so that you don't fall into one of these traps that wants to take your money and preys on your self-esteem and confidence as a self-published author. So I hope you found it helpful, and if you did, please go over to Apple Podcast and give the Heidi Thorne Show a nice rating and review. And of course, subscribe to the podcast. I'm on Apple Podcast and Stitcher and Spotify and Podbean and any pods. So on the major podcast platforms, please subscribe so you don't miss any of this important information. And if you like the video podcast better, whether you just watch it or just listen to it on YouTube, that's fine. You just have to subscribe to my Heidi Thorne YouTube channel and make sure that you click the little notification settings and click those two on. I think it's a little bell at this point in time. You want to click that on so that you'll get notified when a new video comes out. And of course, I would appreciate it if you would share the podcast or the video with your friends on social media. Now, my self-published books are available print, ebook, and audiobooks on Amazon, on Audible, and on Apple Books. So check for my name on any of those platforms and you'll find what's available on there. If you would like to connect with me, my website is very simply HeidiThorne.com. Thank you so much for listening and for your support. I'll look forward to talking with you again in the next episode, and in the meantime, have a great day.